A king stands in the shadows of his castle. Before him, nobles fix their gaze on the cold stone floor, a circle of severed heads. 13 heads, arranged with terrifying precision. From the centre of this horrific ring, the head of an archbishop hangs by a rope, like the toll of a bell. The painting before you is the Bell of Huesca, completed in 1880 by the Spanish master José Casado del Alisal. When it was first exhibited, it shocked viewers, not merely for its spectacle, but because it so profoundly captured the darkness of power. The artist froze the exact moment when absolute authority reveals its true cost, when command crosses the boundary into terror. Casado del Alisal was no stranger to history. Here he chose one of the most disturbing legends of medieval Spain, the story of King Ramiro II and his infamous bell, forged not from bronze but from human beings. And it leaves us with a single unforgettable question. When a ruler must kill to be heard, what kind of kingdom remains to listen? The story that inspired Casado del Alisal's painting takes us back to 12th century Aragon, a kingdom teetering on the edge of chaos. The earliest mention of this legend appears in the 14th century Latin version of the Historia de San Juan de la Peña, also known as the Historia Pinatense, written 2 centuries after Ramiro II's reign by order of King Pedro IV, the ceremonial master. Ramiro II, a former monk who had suddenly ascended to the throne, found himself surrounded by nobles who mocked his quiet nature and doubted his authority. They saw a man of prayer, not power. When Ramiro II grew concerned about the disobedience of his nobles, he sent a messenger to the abbot of San Pons de Tomeras, seeking guidance from his former mentor, a man named Forzado. The king asked his elder, "How can I rule over men who refuse to obey?" The abbot said nothing. Instead, he calmly led the messenger to a garden and, holding a blade, began cutting the tallest flowers, one by one, letting their heads fall to the ground. He then told the messenger, "Go back to my lord the king and tell him what you have seen. No other answer will I give you." The messenger returned to the king and recounted that the abbot had given no words, only demonstration, trimming the flowers in his garden. Ramiro understood. To preserve the garden, the proud must be pruned. Immediately he sent letters across the kingdom, summoning nobles, knights and towns to the court at Huesca. A rumour spread that a bell was to be built there, one that would be heard throughout the realm, crafted by master artisans from France. When the nobles and knights heard this, they said, "Let us see what madness the king intends." The very men who had once dismissed his authority. And when they arrived at Huesca, inside the castle, the rebellious lords were summoned, executed one by one, and their heads arranged on the cold stone floor in a perfect circle. At the centre hung the head of the Archbishop of Huesca, the loudest voice of dissent, now silenced forever. That day Ramiro's bell rang, not with sound, but with slaughter. José Casado del Alisal was one of the towering figures of 19th century Spanish painting. Born in Palencia, he began his training at the city's municipal drawing school, a cradle for young talent that produced many of Spain's finest painters. Later he continued his studies at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts of San Fernando in Madrid, under the celebrated Federico de Madrazo, a master who shaped an entire generation of Spanish artists. In 1855, Casado's promise earned him a scholarship to Rome for his painting, The Resurrection of Lazarus. From there, his journey carried him through Europe's artistic capitals, Naples, Milan, Venice, and later Paris, where he absorbed lessons in classical balance, Italian drama, and French precision. His works began to win medals in national exhibitions, The Last Moments of Ferdinand IV, The Summoned in 1860, The Surrender of Bailey in 1864. By 1881, he became the first director of the Spanish Academy in Rome, a position of immense prestige. That same year, he unveiled the Bell of Huesca, the work that would define him. To his disappointment, it earned no medal, only an honourable mention. Feeling misunderstood, Casado resigned from his post. And yet, the painting itself would outlast every award, securing his place in the history of Spanish art. The Bell of Huesca feels less like a depiction of a historical event, and more like a suspended act of judgment, a painting in which time itself seems to hold its breath. At the foot of the steps stands King Ramiro II. His face is a mask of calm authority. His posture is measured, almost theatrical, pointing towards something no human should ever witness. Before him, a line of terrified nobles stands frozen, like statues caught between disbelief and dread. Their eyes are fixed on what lies upon the cold stone floor. 13 severed heads, arranged in a perfect circle, forming the shape of the great bell Ramiro had promised to unveil. Look closely at the nobles. None of them are alike. One's fists are clenched, eyes bulging with suppressed fury. Another stares blankly, his expression hollow, pressed back by the stone walls that allow him no retreat. Two others stand side by side. One leans on his sword like a cane, contemplating the scene, his thoughts almost transparent to us. The other leans forward, drawn by a morbid fascination. One turns away, yet the corner of his eye still takes in the horror, as if shielding himself from the full weight of truth. Each of them is painted with a distinct emotion: fear, horror, confusion, resignation, as if Casado has captured the entire spectrum of human reaction to power. Even the figures half hidden in the shadows of the hall appear as frozen witnesses, paralysed in a silence that will echo through the centuries. But among them stands a man entirely consumed by the moment. His right hand rests on a column. His right foot is hidden under his robe on the upper step, while his left foot is planted on the lower one. His sword hangs by his side. The weapon itself seems to hold him in place, preventing his descent. His posture and gaze convey shock, terror, and thought all at once. His suspension on the steps makes him the most unstable figure in the composition. From the armour glimpsed beneath his cloak, the faint shimmer of chainmail, we can surmise he was likely a senior knight or military advisor at court. Around his neck gleams a golden collar with a central emerald and 4 smaller green stones, ornaments reserved for the privileged, for commanders or high-ranking nobles. In medieval symbolism, green stones signified wisdom, faith, and spiritual power. If this man truly represents one of the king's advisors, Casado may have intended these details to suggest that Ramiro, in this act of revelation, has suspended not only justice, but wisdom, faith, and divine order itself. Moving away from the old man, as our eyes trace the circle of heads, Casado reveals that this is not a cliché image of punishment, but a ledger of real men who had once been among the most powerful in Aragon. Each head once belonged to a noble who had dared to challenge him, and now each acts as a warning, written in blood and silence. Art historians have even identified some of the severed noble heads. On the right, the second head belongs to Gil da Trocillo. A little further forward, the 5th head is Garcia de Bidor. In the left corner, the 11th head, partially hidden in shadow, is Feliz de Lizana. And finally, at the centre, suspended by a rope and swinging, is the head of the Archbishop of Huesca, Pedro de Lucrecia, whose betrayal had ignited the uprising. For me, this painting strongly evokes the severed head of John the Baptist in Gustave Moreau's The Apparition, painted around 1874 to 1876, just a few years before Casado completed this work in 1880. Casado depicts this moment of revelation with unbearable intensity. Notice the corners of the frame, swallowed in shadow, the headless bodies piled atop one another, their hands still armed. Even the dog, restrained by Ramiro with a thick chain, radiates violence. Look at its teeth and mouth, still drenched in blood. The dog seems to display its utmost ferocity in service to its master. The darkness of the dog's body merges with the king's robes, forming a single, malevolent entity. The composition itself is a masterpiece of restraint and control. The scene emerges in a muted, stony grey palette, illuminated by the flicker of torchlight glinting off armour and silk, emphasising the cold authority of power. A stone column divides the frame into 2 equal parts. On the left, the stillness of the king, darkness and blood dominate the image. while the positions and gazes of the nobles in the light form a line that inevitably draws the eye toward the horrific arrangement below. No movement, no chaos, only a calm, suffocating comprehension. Don't miss the details. A hat lies on the stone floor. A glove rests on the first step, which seems to have been significant to Casado from his earliest sketches, likely belonging to one of the severed nobles. A golden crown atop a noble's head adds new meaning and layers to the scene. The direct, unflinching gaze of one of the severed heads meets us squarely. The archbishop's head, its hair entangled in the hook to which the rope is tied, completes the tableau. One of the most striking aspects of his artistry is how he renders the pool of blood. Starting in the left corner, where the headless bodies lie, it weaves toward the severed heads, guiding our gaze from one to the next, finally leading us to the right corner of the frame, where the painter's signature is etched into the stone floor. Rome, 1880. Casado. Through measured use of light, shadow and stillness, Casado creates a masterpiece of revelation, an image of power, punishment and silence that resonates across centuries. This resonance is felt most profoundly in the scale of the work itself. Casado del Alisal painted the Bell of Huesca on an enormous canvas measuring 4.74 meters wide by 3.56 meters high, a size so vast it overwhelms the viewer. Standing before it, one does not merely look at the painting, one steps into it. Here the scale of the canvas becomes part of the message itself, compelling us to feel the same weight, the same terror that must have filled that hall in 1135. What we witness in the Bell of Huesca is more than a historical event. Casado reveals a political stance amid the clashes between Spain's liberals and conservatives. The story clearly venerates the power of the monarchy and, by extension, the authoritarian authority of government over its people, showing that disobedience and betrayal are rightly punished. A reflection on the unrest following the La Gloriosa Revolution and Spain's First Republic.
And this is why every painting tells a story. The true subject here is not death, but strategy. Casado reflects on political cunning, on how power can be disguised as quiet necessity. Ramiro's movement is not rage, it is instruction. He seems to tell his nobles, this is what disobedience looks like. The bell he promised, a bell to be heard throughout Aragon, becomes an image so merciless and precise that it transcends cruelty. It transforms into legend, letting us hear the echo of a bell that was never rung.